Hi there, and welcome to all our viewers. My name is Laura. Welcome to Equestrian Skill Builders live broadcast, where we discuss equestrian-related topics and share ideas.
Well, everybody, she's having a little bit of a technical problem, but I'm sure she'll be right back.
Yes, she's got her Christmas decorations up, right?
Right.
And exercises.
There she is.
Here I is. So you missed my intro, did you?
Yes.
Okay, so if you like horsey-related stuff, stay tuned because my guest today, Patricia Jellerson and Randy Thompson, and I will share with you some excellent exercises and answer some questions for you. So, Randy, where are you coming in from today?
I'm on top of a mountain in North Carolina, and it's cold out here.
How about you, Patricia? Where are you coming in from?
Oklahoma, the wilds of Oklahoma. And we just had a little snowstorm for like 3 days. Kind of unusual for us. I know.
Wow. So winter has come early for everybody.
Absolutely.
Normal time. Well, I'm Laura, and I help people improve their riding and training and understanding their horses by providing hands-on and now virtual training to produce educated, thinking horse people. Check out my website. I'm going to put that in the comments there. So I'm also a Canadian equestrian senior judge, hunter, jumper, equitation, and hack, and senior steward, and a competition coach specialist. And I produce these live equestrian-related videos on Facebook and YouTube. So welcome you guys.
Hi, everybody. Hope everybody's ready for Christmas.
Well,
I got you get lots of horses and ponies for Christmas. I see your lights.
My little twinkly lights, yes.
Yes. So, and they're like a brown.
I was going to make them in a heart, but I decided that was just too kitschy. So, Randy, what have you been doing to keep yourself busy these past few weeks?
Oh, there's so much to keep busy with in life. So for those who don't already know me, you can find more about me at randythompsonlive.com. I'm the one who created Horse and Rider Awareness, and from that I created other educational programs that you can find, especially on Facebook, including dressage instructors, jumping instructors, horse and rider awareness, horse expert witness. What other things do I do? Oh, yes, I do expert witness work, and I certify professionals in the horse business. I certify and train them. I've been doing that for over 30 years now.
Excellent. You've been busy. And how about you, Patricia?
Pretty busy. I've been out of town the last couple of weeks. We had a horse show in Tulsa, and then I actually took a little vacation with my husband. So
nice to have a vacation.
Yeah, I haven't had one in ages, even long before COVID. And we kept putting it off and putting off. We had an Airbnb, and finally we're just like, oh, we're going. So we went to Charleston, South Carolina, which is a very historic city. I went to college there.
Awesome. So we have some great topics for you today. We're going to talk about girth. Katie Equestrian from YouTube asked me about girths, and Jan Lee asked me some questions about position stuff, about gloves and Bitless Bridles. And also, if we have time, we're going to give you some tips on how to memorize your course, because Patricia had something that happened this weekend that she's going to share with us. But right now we're going to talk about girths and why. What is your preference? Leather, fluffy, memory foam girth? What's your preference? Is there any rules on hunters about girth? And this person, Katie, asked me, I don't know if there's any rules about girths, but I'm showing a circuit next year and I need to buy one for my boy. So Patricia, could you weigh in on the girths? And
sure.
I just wanted to
congratulations for moving up, and if you are, and good luck in your show efforts. I'm not very judgmental as far as girths go. I'm a large R judge because I know a lot of it depends on the horse. You know, there are a lot of horses that have sensitive girths and need a fleece girth so that they don't get sores. You know, others might slip and need a neoprene girth. The only thing I don't care for is a girth cover. I feel like if you need to cover your girth, you should just go ahead and buy a fleece one.
Okay. So, how about you, Randy? What's your feeling about girths?
Well, girths, like any equipment we use on a horse, is very important. Patricia's already talked about the rules regarding girths in the show rings and what's acceptable. I like a contoured girth, one that has an opening where the horse's elbows have that freedom. I also like it when they have stretchy pieces on them, whether it's a girth that has a four-way stretch or the elastic bands on both sides, because it allows the horse, especially when they're jumping, to expand their rib cage so they're comfortable instead of being held in tighter. Now, if you're doing the equitation class, you can pretty much pick, or the hunters, you can pick just about anything. If you have a horse that's wearing cocks on it, those are those little screws they put in the bottom of the shoes, I would recommend a girth that has a cock guard, because if your horse is jumping and really tucks its legs up, it will stop jumping because it's hurting the bottom of the front where the girth goes by hitting itself with the cocks.
Those are quite common. Those belly girths are quite common in the jumpers. Everyone wears them because sometimes the horses, cocks or not, will brush their bellies, and it gives them some protection.
Yeah, for sure. I know I had a jumper that I had, and I thought, yeah, really? He's not really that great of a jumper that he needs one of those. And then I took it off and looked at it. Yeah, there's little nicks in there from corks. So. Yeah, excellent. So what I did when I was asked this question, I went to some of my friends on Facebook, judges and a trainer, and I asked them this exact question. And this question is from Katie Equestrian. So she asked us on YouTube about the girths. So I asked my friend Patty Downing-Nygaard, who's a judge as well, and she said anything goes with her. She doesn't mind any type of girth. She said leather's always good, nothing too fluffy, and she doesn't mind girth covers either. So that's what Patty said. And then I asked another judge / trainer, Robert Robold, and he says definitely fuzzy. I found that the neoprene tends to pull hair and promote tension. In his personal experience, that happens, and also leather rubs some of the thin-skinned horses. And there's nothing in the rule book. We just checked, actually. There's nothing in the rule book. And the bottom line is judges really just want to see the horse jumping well. So if whatever you can afford, whatever you like is great. So then I asked a trainer, Meredith Gallagher, and she says that she doesn't like fluffy. Leather is still used, but she thinks the maintenance on the leather girth is difficult, hard to keep them soft and comfortable for the horse, and they're expensive. So she uses something called Pro-Choice girth, and I did get a picture of it. I
think those have neoprene on the backing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I just got a picture of it so we could see it. There's the Pro-Choice girth.
And I'm with Randy. I think it's so great that they've put elastic on both sides now instead of just one. But I also have to caution people, as I caution my students, that you can't, it's the worst thing to pull it all the way up on one side and then gradually pull it all the way up on the other side. I mean, you should start with it equal and then raise one side, raise the other side, raise until you get it where you want it. Because otherwise, I just don't think it's as comfortable for the horse.
I agree with you completely. And it's easy for the riders, whoever is working with the horse, whether it's your groom or you're working yourself, to go from the front and make sure that the girth is even on both sides of the horse.
Mm-hmm.
And you should. You can go from one side to the other side to adjust it, as Patricia was saying. I agree with that completely.
Yeah. And also with the elastics, sometimes they get too tight.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also it depends on your horse and the way your horse is built and, you know, what you're doing and what type of riding you're doing. But if you do it too tight, some horses may not like that. So there's a balance between the safety and getting it too tight and being uncomfortable. Think of it as, you know, you want to cinch up your own belt.
Yeah,
Right?
your belt.
You want your belt tight enough to keep your pants up, but not so tight that you can't breathe.
And if your saddle is slipping, rather than over tightening your girth, think about there's certain inserts that you can buy, neoprene, very thin neoprene pads that you can put under your saddle pad to help keep your girth from slipping. I mean, your saddle from slipping and not have to over tighten the girth.
And that's why it's so important when you have the time to have a saddle fitter come out and make sure your saddle fits. If your saddle is not fitting your horse, it's going to affect their jumping, it's going to affect their performance, and it's a problem that can be remedied by just having a professional look at it. You know, some horses that are really round, all they need is a crooper. They look kind of weird, but it keeps the saddle from sliding forward over the round withers.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly right. Yeah. And the other, I guess the other thing that if you have to do it up too tightly, you know, sometimes in the spring or the summer, if your horse is on grass, you can only just get the little bit of the girth tab in the girth, and they just have to crank it up. There's also the girth extenders that you can get as well, right? To make sure that it's comfortable. But the bottom line is that you can use whatever girth that you like, whatever's comfortable for your horse, and really whatever's comfortable for your horse is important because judges just want to see the horse jump properly and the hunters.
Jump properly, ears forward, pleasant expression, and that's not going to happen if the horse is in pain or uncomfortable.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. So great. So let's move on to the next topic here. Next topic is, how do you keep your elbows? This person, Jan Lee, asks, how do you keep your elbows back when cantering? And I think she means elbows in when cantering. How do you keep your elbows in when cantering? And I mean, I can imagine this happening. I don't know what you imagine when someone asks you, how do you keep my elbows back? Is that what you imagine when you see that?
Chicken wings. Bark, bark, bark.
Yeah. So,
I think
Patricia,
that's
what do you
what
think?
she means. Yeah, that's probably what she means. I mean, I hope she doesn't mean back, because personally, I like to see the elbows a little towards the front of the body rather than back behind the back. So I hope she doesn't mean that, but I think you're probably right. She probably means keeping them still.
So how do you keep your elbows still?
Well, I think it helps not to have your
I'm in your
reins
riding
too
lesson and I'm
long.
going like this.
Yeah. I mean, when your reins are too long, I think, and your hands get too far back, that happens quite a lot. I again like to just tell people, kind of rest your elbow against the front of your stomach a little bit, you know, just to get a feel for where your hand and your arm should be. And I think a lot of times it's just overcompensation. You know, maybe the horse is lazy and their leg isn't strong enough.
Right. Okay, so Randy, how about you? What would you do if you were teaching a clinic somewhere and somebody came in with their elbows? What would you do to help them keep their elbows still?
Well, this is actually a very common problem, a challenge for riders, and it's usually a result of the rider using too much hand instead of more seat and leg when they're riding. So you want to think when you're riding, as Patricia was saying, the elbow should be slightly in front, and you should always ask yourself this question: is your seat coming through your elbows? Is the feeling, are you feeling more pressure on the front from your hand? Because that's usually when your elbows go flat instead of having that bend that they need to have. Without that bend, your hips can't come through your elbows is the term, and you are riding more with your seat and legs. Now, something that works with many riders is you remember the dollar bill thing where you'd put a dollar bill under your thigh, right, guys?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, you just put something underneath of your hand here, or if it's down lower, put it there, and it should be able to stay there because, again, it's the hips coming through the elbows that allow the horse to move forward. If you're going like a train like this, You're not using your arm position correctly, and you're going to lose your money right away. You know, unless you're jumping and then you do the reach. But when you're working on the flat to get the feeling of it, you'll feel that you will be balanced in a different position over your seat bones than when you throw your hands forward, which is where typically people start going like this instead of coming from their seat and legs, especially those that are lower level riders.
I think you nailed it, Randy. I think that it's more than just a hand and elbow thing. It comes from your seat and your legs. So your seat has to be able to move independently from your upper body and your elbows and your shoulders, right? Yeah. So I totally agree.
Discipline of riding.
Pardon me?
For any discipline of riding.
For any discipline, whether you're dressage or Western pleasure or hunter jumper or whatever the other ones are.
Right.
No one wants to see floppy elbows, right? No matter what the discipline.
You know, if I was jumping off for the $100,000 and I had to get that extra foot in there to get my right spot, man, I'd be giving her, right? I'd be giving her for that $100,000. Wouldn't you?
Yes.
You can't tell me that those guys don't do everything they got in their toolbox to get that done. I mean, if I was, but yes, when you're going to an equitation class, everything should be looking good. But I think that you mentioned something else, though, Randy, that is maybe this is what the question was, which is how do you get your elbows back when cantering? Maybe they have their arms out straight.
Yes.
Okay.
Are their shoulders too forward?
Yeah. So maybe their arms are too straight without the straight line elbow hand horse's mouth. Right. And that could be. So how do you fix that one? Patricia, how do you fix that one?
I think that you have to, again, bring your arms back a little so they're just kind of brushing the sides. And the most important thing is to keep that straight line from elbow to bit, which does involve a little bit of bend, you know. I have to get them to visualize what that looks and feels like. But I think, you know, the arms forward is a little easier to fix than the arms flapping, because you just have to say, bring your arm back a little bit so it's touching your body.
Yeah. If I could add something here, something that I did a lot of learner judging in Wellington and those circuits, but the big thing is when we were watching the equitation classes or the hunter classes, if you'll just use a martingale or the what do you call the thing that goes on the front of the horse and
martingale strap or breastplate.
Yes, all you need is if your hands should always be at that spot,
slightly in front of the pommel.
Right, and then you'll know if your hand is all of a sudden going 6 inches in front of it, or if your hand is sliding back towards you, that you're not in the proper position to stay balanced on your horse as it's working.
Right.
That's a rule of thumb. And then you've got different people with different conformations that are going to have difficulties with that too, right? I mean, somebody with short arms or what's that?
True. I have short arms and I can keep my hands in. What happens? What happens is when riders start, when they can't keep their hands there, it's usually a result of their seat sliding back too far in the saddle. So instead of staying over their legs, their seat is slid back, and as a result, their hands come back behind where the martingale would be. So I'm a short arm rider. Even kids can do this because, you know, they're riding the smaller saddles and the smaller ponies. I have found it's pretty much the same for everybody.
Yeah. Then that gets into another thing too, right? Is your saddle fitting you properly?
Yeah.
So maybe the symptom is that your arms are straight, but the cause of it isn't your arms. It's the fact that, like you said, you're slipping to the back of your saddle and your saddle doesn't fit properly.
Yeah.
So there's so as a judge, there's kind of a picture you have in your brain, and you fit those people into that picture that you have in your brain. And if you don't fit into that picture, there's something going on with your position that you have to fix.
Yes. And it's usually not so much their hands and their elbows as what they're doing with their seat. And that's why if their seat slides back too far, they're not going to feel like their hips are coming through their elbows.
Yep. Right. That's good. Good
Yeah.
point. That's a
Mhm.
really good point. So I remember, now I don't know if this was because my hands were too far forward or my seat was slipping to the back of the saddle, but I do remember having baler twine involved with my elbows around my waist to keep my right, my elbows in around my waist,
We used
right?
to do that, and then the whip behind the elbows. But as
Yeah,
Patricia was saying, it takes the hands riders too far back, and
Back, yes.
it creates
Yes.
a dangerous situation. If something happens and you're either held back with a
yeah,
whip or you've got a twine around you, it would be better to use what I call as a neck strap if you don't have a
Mhm.
martingale. And that'll, all you have to do is remember, if your hands aren't where they belong, where the
yeah.
neck strap meets, 3 inches above the withers, whatever, in front of the withers,
Mhm.
then it's because your seat, or as Laura was saying, your saddle doesn't fit. It's usually the
Something's
seat
going
pulling
on.
back. Yes, you're
Yeah.
not keeping your weight over your lower legs. You
Mhm.
let it slide behind.
Well, I think a lot of times too, I see people riding with too long a rein, not so much in the bigger shows, but a lot in the intermediate, in the schooling shows, just too long a rein. And when your reins are long, your hands have no choice but to be back because every time you tighten them, you're pulling past your body.
And your seat is in the wrong place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like a domino effect, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're not over top of your leg, your seat's going to be falling back to the back, and then your hands get back, and then it's just like they're all so connected. And the key is to stay over top of your leg. What's an exercise to keep riders over top of their legs?
Um, lots of 2-point, lots of
That's
2-point.
I'd say 2-point, 2-point, 2-point,
Mhm.
2-point at the walk. One of my favorite ones is halt, walk, transition into 2-point position, which a lot of riders find that difficult to do because they really have to engage their legs.
Our
And
downward transition is where many riders lose their position.
Mhm.
yeah,
And also, I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, standing in your stirrups. That's one I do a lot at
standing,
the
yeah.
trot and the walk. Standing in your stirrups and then sinking down by bending your knee and hip and not throwing your seat to the back of the saddle.
And one of my favorite exercises, along with what they're saying, is either you, or if you're working with other riders, have them start with maybe 5 strides, 5 steps where they can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2-point position, another 5 steps in your half, or that's the half seat, another 5 steps. You can bring it down to 3 or 2 in sitting position. So what is it? Sitting,
3-point.
3-point. Well, that's kind of the sitting. There was another one. I'm trying to think of what it is right now. Sorry, my mind's a little foggy. And then, of course, the 2-point. What was the other one? Anyway, it doesn't matter right now. But if you do these different changes,
Yeah.
what you'll find most riders, or if you're teaching riders, is where you're losing your center of balance over your lower legs. And that's the key, is to find a place. Now, at most of the international riding schools, they require that their riders warm up, at the trot, to get the horse and the rider warmed up for at least 5 minutes in 2-point position, to ensure that they're sinking down. Most riders can't make it 3 minutes and they get tired. But what it does is, like Patricia was saying, you sink down over your lower leg and your seat becomes more secure as a result, which changes everything else. But it takes, they're doing it 5 minutes a day. How many minutes can you do 2-point position? If you're holding tension or stiffness in your body, it's going to be very hard. That's why you want a neck strap or something to balance with when you're practicing this. But with time, you will become a more fluid rider that can follow the movement of the horse instead of not following the movement and popping all over the saddle.
Right. And I'm surprised a lot of times when I judge those schooling shows, they'll have like a walk trot class. And I'll always I may not ask for sitting trot if the riders are really green, but I'll always ask for a 2-point. And a lot of them, it's like they've never done the 2-point. To me, it's such an early part
It's a
of
fundamental
training.
thing, isn't it?
Oh, I remember what the other exercise, what that was, the 2-point posting trot and sitting trot.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what
Yeah.
you practice while you're doing that exercise. And as I said, it's what will get you connected with your riding position, where you can be more effective in what you're doing with your horse. And It makes them look better. I know we all have used these exercises.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So,
That's a big cat, Randy. How much does that cat weigh?
oh, she's 14 pounds. She was
Holy smokies.
Oh, did you hear that?
She's got her COVID weight on.
Oh,
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so excellent. One of my favorite exercises for that is what I call the up, up, down exercise. Standing in your stirrups and 2-point for two beats, down for one. Up, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Have to stay over top of your leg to do that exercise. You have to be able to feel the horse, feel the rhythm of the horse, balance over top of your leg, and be able to move and keep yourself in balance. And then the converse of that is down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up. You have to be able to feel the horse. And, I mean, we can go up, down, but that's gets really mechanical if you do that.
well, and plus when you're doing just the up down, which most riders do, is you never really, until you really focus on what's happening with your body and the horse, the goal is it's the horse's stride that pushes you out of the saddle. It's not the rider posting up, and of course beginners can't do this, but you want to feel like the thrust of the horse's hind legs pushes you up out of the saddle instead of you bebopping all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so exactly. And I think the exercise to help with that would be to do 2-point without rising trot without stirrups. Because so then the horse does, instead of always focusing on your stirrups, then the push of the horse will help you with your rising trot when you're.
But only do it on a safe horse. Don't go.
Only do it on a safe horse, and if you're, if you're at that level, for sure.
Yes.
Or you can have someone put you on the lunge line and do the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
A lot of these things you can do by yourself. So if you're working on improving your riding position, these are great tips that you can use at home without your instructor. If you're an instructor, you can give these tips to your rider that they can practice even when you're not there.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So let's move on to the next one. Why do you have to wear gloves? Whoopsie. Okay, you've got it, Randy. Randy and I are pressing the different buttons at the same time. So why do you have to wear gloves? Like, why is wearing gloves so important? This was another question that we got from YouTube. If you do have questions, really love to have your questions. And if it's your first time here, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate you being here. And if it's not your first time here, thank you for joining us right here today. We've got some great questions. One of them is, why do you have to wear gloves? Patricia, you want to take that one?
Sure. I think we double checked and there's no rule, but it's just such an integral part of the whole outfit. You're presenting yourself to your judge. You're in a coat, you're in a riding shirt, you have your gloves and you have your boots. It's just part of the outfit. But I think it is also very practical too. Many of us who have ever had the reins slip through our hands and got those burns from those laced reins, you I think are going to wear gloves after that. They just increase the grip, and I think they're better for the safety of the rider as well.
So safety of the rider is one reason why, and also to protect your hands. Randy, what's another reason? You got any more?
Well, it took me a while because, I was raised in the hills of Minnesota running around and stuff. It took me a while to adjust to wearing gloves, but boy, did they save on my hands. It made such a difference. So as my progress continue with learning about gloves, it's really, you want to think about the quality of the gloves you're purchasing, because if you get nice ones, once you adjust to the feeling of them, then they stretch out, because new ones usually have to stretch out. You'll get so comfortable in them. So the quality of the gloves will make a difference to what you're doing. As far as showing in them, if you're not wearing gloves, you might as well go back to the hills of Minnesota type of thing, because those gloves, especially if they match your outfit, I don't think there's any color rules on the color of gloves you can wear in the hunter jumper ring. But what it does is it creates a more beautiful appearance, as Patricia was saying, it just looks a more finished look. And for those of you who tend to get a little busy with your hands, which is like 90% of riders, right, that are riding from their hands instead of their seat, the judge won't notice it as much because it blends in with everything else.
I think though in the hunters and the eck, it's pretty much black for us. I mean, in the jumpers, you're wide open, but in the hunters and equitation, you want black. And Randy's so right. A good pair of leather gloves will last you longer. They conform to the shape of your hands, and it's worth the money. Yeah.
And they have winter gloves too. Like when I'm riding on my own, I have winter gloves, but I now am to a point where I don't ride without gloves because, as Patricia was saying and Laura, you know, you get tired of getting all these blisters because we're always trying to adjust our hands to be in the right place on the reins. You may not notice it with professionals, but maybe you'll look a little closer now, but you'll notice that they'll catch it when their reins, you know, when their hands are supposed to be in a certain place, like the martingale. They'll feel the reins slide out. They'll adjust their seat first, and then they slide their hands just a little bit on them, and they get them up within seconds, where it might take you a minute to realize your hands have slid back.
Or if the horse stumbles and pulls the reins out of your hand, that happens very often. You know, it will definitely help having those gloves on to keep your hands from getting rubbed and also having better grip.
Yes, and it'll make you look better.
Definitely. I think some disciplines, I think dressage, there are some specifications on the color of the gloves. And I think it's up to you to check your rule specifications about glove color. But I think if someone came into a hunter class with equitation class with white gloves on, that would really raise some eyebrows. Why?
And dressage, you're not required to wear white gloves. You can come in with dark gloves. That's fine. But the better riders who want to show off will come in with the white gloves because it shows that they're really riding with their seat and legs more than their hands.
If you got good hands, why not wear white gloves?
It's not a requisite. You don't have to. Like if you're a lower level rider or you're still using your reins more than your legs and seat, wear dark gloves. It's okay.
I didn't know that wasn't a requirement.
No,
is it only when you get to a certain level, or is it totally to the rider's discretion?
I don't know about that at FEI because most of those riders are so finessed in what they're doing that they can wear with, you know, get by with white gloves. But lower level riders, I would never have them come out in white gloves.
No. Right. Exactly. Exactly. Okay. So if anybody's watching who would like to ask us a question live, we'd be happy to answer questions, but we're going to move on to our next topic, which is about the bitless bridles. You see that thing there? Yeah. Bitless bridles. Are bitless bridles permitted in hunter and or equitation? Bitless bridles. So bitless bridles, those are there's two different types. I do have a photo of those, and I'm going to show that to you now. The two different types. There's bitless bridle. I just want to go here. Show. Here we go. This is a bitless bridle. I think it's called the Dr. Cook or something.
Right.
Yeah, Dr. Cook bridle. It has if you look at it, you could see the reins here, and this crosses underneath and goes to the other side. So this rein goes underneath and goes to the other side of the bridle, and then this comes across and goes to it's something like that. That's a Dr. Cook. And then we have the Hackamore, which is more a levered thing. So when you pull on the reins this way, it has the action down on the horse's pole here when you pull on the reins. Can you see that? Am I making sense there?
They also put pressure on the nose and on the nose band when you pull on that. And there's different kinds of hackamores. Like you'll see them more often in the jumping ring, but for people, this is a gentle one. Most of them will use cables. There looks like a piece of leather around their nose that's round. There is a cable inside of it, and you can, with the wrong hands, break a horse the cartilage
right here.
This
instead of this nice padded thing, there's a cable there.
Yes.
And sometimes instead of this nice leather thing, they have a chain.
Well, they'll usually wrap the chain inside of the leather, and then they'll have a longer shank, because the longer the shank, the more the nutcracker effect on the horse's nose.
So, so this is the shank. So if it's longer and the reins are attached here, you get more leverage.
Nutcracker effect. Just call it nutcracker.
Right.
Yeah. So those are the different types of bitless bridles, and they are not permitted in the hunter. They are not permitted in dressage. If anybody's riding jaws, they are not permitted in equitation. And Patricia, you want to talk about that for a bit?
No, they're just not. I mean, a rider would be excused if they came in a bitless bridle. It's unauthorized equipment in the hunters and the equitation. And I think, again, we're just looking for tradition. We're looking for things that are conservative in the hunters and the jumpers, that don't interfere or stand out. And, it's just not done.
That's it. How about you, Randy?
Well, a lot of people think they're being kinder to their horse, and they'll go bitless or bridleless and all this stuff. And excuse me while I roll my eyes. So you can use them in the jumper ring, and it has to, you're in a contained space. Because I've learned from experience, if there was anything to try, I have done it. I've made all the mistakes, so I can tell you my experience with them. I call most of the bitless bridles kisses of death. Because if something happens and you're outside or not even in a controlled space, I would never take them outside in a non-controlled space. You don't have the brakes you do with a bit. Even if a horse is running through the bit, you can still, because when it's an emergency, you do what you can to stop a horse, right, ladies?
Yeah.
Bottom line. With a bitless bridle, you might as well just kiss your assets goodbye, because that horse learns very quickly. They can run through it. Like I said, I've had this happen. So for me, I will not even work with a rider who feels the need to have to go bitless, because I've seen the results. I've seen the cases in court, and I've experienced what happens when a horse goes out of control. And once they learn they can take control in a bitless type of bridle, like I said, it's just a kiss of death.
I think it's absolutely reserved for very advanced riders.
Yeah.
And I mean, you'll see some Olympic riders that use bitless bridles, and they're perfectly capable of using them, but I certainly wouldn't recommend them for anything under that level.
And some people start using because they say, oh, my horse doesn't like the bit. Well, it's probably not the horse not liking the bit. It's probably whatever you're doing with your hands that's messing up the horse's mouth. And you're doing the same thing with a bitless bridle. It's just that, so it's easier. I have found, just get a horse adjusted to a bit, get them comfortable, take some lessons, learn how to use
your hands properly.
How to use your hands. Because it's not the bridle.
Tell us how you really feel, Randy.
Yeah, exactly. Really? Wait a minute now. Yeah. So one of the things I know, I was stewarding this summer at a horse show, and this was the jumper class, and we're talking like 0.75 jumper, and this horse came up. He had a hackamore in it, but it had a bridle underneath it as well. So they had the hackamore with a bit underneath it. And I personally thought it was quite a lot. Maybe the rider did need to have that much control, but for that level of show, I don't know if it was necessary.
It just, when you see something like that come into a ring, or if you see it anywhere, you just know the lack of knowledge that rider has to think that they have to go to that level of extremism. A bit and a hackamore? Are you kidding me? Like I said, go take some lessons.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I think I would, if I had a horse that was, had mouth problems, like a parrot mouth, or maybe some sort of, like had some surgery on his mouth, or really couldn't have the bit in his mouth because there was some problem with the bars of his mouth, I think I would consider it. But I think
Only
the
in a
whole,
controlled space, as Randy says.
pardon me?
Only in a controlled space, as Randy says, I think is.
Yeah. But the whole idea of riding and training for me is to get the horse between your leg and your hand. And I think it's difficult, or you can't even do that if you have a bit, if you don't have a bit.
I think the reason why it's common in the jumper ring is because those horses carry themselves up a little more. And I think there are a lot of horses that if you touch their mouth and their first instinct is to toss their head in a big way. And, if you're jumping a Grand Prix, that's really going to make things difficult. So those horses tend to go better in a bitless bridle. But again, they're in the hands of a very experienced, knowledgeable rider.
Right.
Who knows the risks?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that's great. If anybody is watching, again, thank you everybody for watching and being with us here today. If you do have any questions, we'd love to hear from you. Just put it in the comments and we'll get to it as best we can. And if you like my Christmas decorations, let me know. The red ones don't turn up so well. Yeah, let me know. So let's move on. Let's move on to tips for learning your courses.
Yes, I was at a show, as I mentioned earlier, the week before last, and I have a good rider. I mean, she's still in the intermediate stages, but she works very hard, and she's definitely not a slacker. But we were in the Hunter Derby, which is a 2-round class. She was called in third in a very big class after her first round. She had a great round. And she had about 40 minutes break. Now, when we walked the course, we walked both rounds. But as a lot of riders say, she's like, oh, I don't want to learn the second course yet. I'll get confused. So when she had that break, I told her, go ahead and memorize, look over that second course. And when we got to the ring, I could just tell she had a look of panic in her eyes.
She didn't have enough time?
She had plenty of time, but I don't think she spent it wisely. And when she got to the ring, as I said, she just had this look in her eyes. And sure enough, she went off course. So,
how many jumps?
There were 9, I believe.
This is the Hunter Derby second round.
Derby second round, yeah.
And she was called in third.
She was called in third after the first round, yeah. So she still got a ribbon because she was one of the 12 called in, but it was 12th instead of higher. But
wow.
And I think so. I thought it might be good to if we could come up with some suggestions, because I know the jumper courses too can get quite long, and then you have to immediately go in sometimes with your jump off. What suggestions do you guys have for memorizing a course?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
See, I don't do it that way. I think this was kind of this girl's problem. I like to do it more by lines and singles. Like you have an outside line, you have a single on the diagonal, you have a 2 stride on the outside, you have a 6 stride on the diagonal. I think when you just try to remember it by numbers, it's easier to get confused. And if it's a long course, I like to break it into 2 parts. The first half of my course are these 5 jumps. The second half of my course, at a logical time to divide it, is the second part of the course.
I agree with you, Patricia. I found that that's the easiest way because it's so easy to say, okay, outside line to inside diagonal. And the riders, what it becomes is a visual thing in their mind instead of thinking about whatever they're going to next. But everybody hears it. You go up there and you watch when the trainers are telling the riders the courses. They're saying, okay, you're going to do the inside vertical to the outside line, do a reverse over here. And so they're comfortable with that. And that's in the hunter classes. Once you get into the equitation classes, well, I mean, the equitation and the jumper classes, the rider has to be comfortable doing a lot of different changes, and it's more challenging. There's no question about it. But from my experience, for example, as I said, I learner judged at Wellington, I remember like Allison Firestone was big in that day. She was riding Gem Twist and those horses, but you know, those junior riders were riding 40 courses in a day. I had never seen anything like it, like the whatever other names. But, I was up in the judges box and we'd see them going from place to place in their little scooters. And I was like, how do they even remember all those courses? Because they get off one class and they go right away to the next class. They look at the course and they get on. So the more you practice it, the better you get. But it must become a thing of feeling because, I was astounded because I'm like, what? I was so impressed that, the Firestones, all of them, they all did it. And I was like,
Yeah.
well, I don't think I can do that.
I think what also you have to do is maybe in your mind or even on the ground is to walk the pattern out. Okay. Here I'm coming in the ring. I'm going to and visualize and strategize what you're going to do. I'm going to come in the ring. I'm heading over to this diagonal line. I'm going to pick up my canter. I'm going to look for here and go through stride by stride, line by line. My first line is here, and this is how I'm going to ride it. Then visualize. I'm going to do single diagonal oxer. Then I'm going to do outside line in 6 or, whatever it is to walk it out on the ground. If you have a tendency to forget, walk it out on the ground and picture in your mind what you're going to be doing. So it becomes
I think it's also important to watch some courses.
Oh, yeah.
If you have it in your mind what the course is and then you watch several people go, it just cements it in your mind. I think both those are important. And I think, everyone has different styles of coaching, but I really believe that the last few minutes before they walk into to start their course, I want the rider to have a minute or two to collect themselves and think. And they've got to learn to use that time, to use the time right before they go in the ring. And that's hard for a lot of beginner and intermediate riders to do. They're so full of excitement and apprehension. But
yes. And I'd like to add to that because what you said is so true, Patricia. I'd also like to say that while they're there, while they take that minute, because you just school a little bit and then you go ready for your class. Don't just stand at the gate. Even if you're watching the courses before you, keep your horse walking around so that they're still mentally and physically moving before you go into the ring. Instead of sitting at the gate for 4 or 5 minutes waiting for your round to come up. Something with your horse so they're if they stand around, they're relaxing and they're going off of your aids and everything. And then how many riders do we see as soon as they're ready to go on the course, they're standing there talking to somebody with loose reins, and then they point them right into the ring. And the horse and the rider aren't in the mental mindset to compete. Well, maybe it happens more at the lower levels, but you've got to be prepared every minute because you are competing against people who I can guarantee you will have their horse's mind focused before they go in the ring.
Yeah. So before you head into the ring, do like, okay, where's my horse's head at? Where's my horse's brain? Just do a little bit of a check-in with them saying, hello, we're doing something now. Right. Yeah. So I was listening to somebody teaching or coaching some children when they were learning their courses, and it was a hunter course, and it was like, okay, you think of the hunter course as a sandwich. So here you're going to go, the first line is going to be the mustard. What kind of sandwich do you like? Okay, I want a ham sandwich. Okay, so the first line is the single mustard or single mayonnaise, and then you're going to go outside and do on the outside line that slice of bread, and then you're going to go across the diagonal and do cheese on your ham sandwich. So they kind of, that's how they got their students to learn their courses. Okay, I'm going to do the mustard, then the bread, and then I'm going to do the ham, and then I'm going to do the other piece of slice of bread again. So, and that was kind of an interesting way to teach a child, to visualize the pattern.
Well, I think riders need to be taught to be proactive and use their time wisely.
Your students learned very well on that course, didn't they?
It's like you said, don't spend your last few minutes standing at the gate watching trips. Make sure you get down there early to watch some trips, and then get your horse ready, warm up, go over your course, and be in the zone. But that's hard because horse shows are social events in a lot of ways, but the kids have to be proactive and they have to use their time wisely.
And watch good trips. Don't watch the crappy trips where they've added strides in or gone off course.
But there's many different ways to teach it. However, I'm more traditional with that approach because I believe even the younger children should learn right away. Outside line, diagonal lines, they're so basic. Why add ham and egg and cheese and all that type of thing?
I know, I just thought it was cute. That's all.
Yeah, for me, I would say,
you know what? Maybe those children that she was teaching needed to have that because that was the type of learner brain that they were, because that was the age appropriate thing for them to learn. I'm not saying it was right or not. I'm just saying that's what I heard.
Right. Interesting. Must have been at a very local show, right?
Oh, it was a few years ago, that's for sure.
Yeah, because they'd be laughed out of the ring.
Well, not if they did the course properly. And if it worked for that kid, maybe that was just a learning thing for that child.
Right.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, it could have been, but like I said, I'm traditional. It's like teaching the basics from the beginning. Just learning the diagonal inside, right, Patricia? Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree. I start from the beginning teaching that even to the little kids. And I guess, I'm a little cruel because after this girl missed her course, she came back in again and she was like, I'm scared I'm going to forget it again. I need to go later. And I said, no, you are going to learn your courses.
That's right.
And, you just have to stand here and get it, learn how to remember it. You can't always just ask to be put back in the order.
And it takes practice. I mean, whether you're doing courses or a dressage thing. I know there's like Lendon Gray, you probably all heard her. She was riding tests from training level through Grand Prix. She memorized every one of them. And there's like 4 tests in some of these levels. And I'm like, I don't have the brain capacity to do that. I know my own faults. That's just way overwhelming for me to think of learning all of those tests.
That's definitely, the dressage tests are kind of the same way as a course.
Yeah.
You have to use the same methods to memorize them, I think.
That's right. And then we do the same thing there. A lot of people will, they'll chalk out. You could probably do this with a course, but you don't have a time in the show. They'll chalk off at home because they know their test before they get there. So they'll make a mark, they'll create a ring in their room or whatever, and they'll pretend they're a horse and they'll go through the horse and all the test and all the movements beforehand. So the advantage to dressage is they know the test before they get there.
I'm going to use your suggestion, Laura, about having them walk because you can't walk the course except for the big classes.
Right.
But have them go off in a corner and walk it on their own if they have trouble remembering. I think that's an excellent suggestion.
So if you do that and you say, okay, the first jump is the brush, and then they, as they go through, I guess you kind of get them to coach themselves through it, like how they would ride it as well. And that's exactly what Randy was saying, what dressage people do with their dressage tests is they mark it off and they walk it in their stable aisle before they head out, or they have like
white pieces. You can take those drawing boards and you can draw them on there too. But again, they know their tests before they get there.
Mhm.
You don't have that much time in the hunter-jumper world.
You don't.
No, but to get off, if she has 40 minutes to learn her course,
That's enough time.
she can go, like you say, go somewhere by her trailer or by herself or wherever she's permitted to go and get somebody.
Do it that way, because it's, as we're saying, there's different learning techniques.
Mhm.
For me, it's learning a technique that's traditional in that industry because it's been proven over time to work. And I do a lot of things that are out of the box, but when it comes to memorizing a course or memorizing a dressage test, they've been doing this for a long time.
And I think it's important too that you learn to memorize more than one course. I always get worried when we're walking a course, a jumper course or a hunter course, and I'm like, well, let's walk the jump off now. And they're like, no, it will make me forget the first one. I think you have to get used to knowing more than one course.
Because that's what the pros do. They just it is what it is. And the ones, like I said, like the youth that are showing in the level of Wellington, how they can go from one show ring to another and just look at it and go in and ride the course correctly just blew my mind.
Yeah, so they have to start to educate themselves. I agree with you, Patricia. They have to start to educate themselves to kind of know the first one and have an idea of the second one so that they don't take 3 minutes. Well, what do they do in an immediate jump off if they don't
have to know where they go in,
And it's nice in the jumper ring because you usually have the number at the fence or something.
Yes, it makes it a little easier. Exactly. Yeah. You have the numbers up for the jumper courses at the bigger shows. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
Makes it easier.
So, we got 3 minutes left here. Do you want to do the quickie on the video, Patricia?
Sure.
Okay.
This is one of my students at the show, new horse, first show with the horse, and we were very pleased with it. It's really going to be a jumper and an equitation horse, but we're doing the hunters for the first few courses. This girl has her biggest issue has always been coming back too soon after the fence, not necessarily with her hands, but with her body. It's kind of a constant struggle that we're working on with a lot of the exercises that we've talked about here. But this horse has a huge stride, so it's kind of a struggle to get him.
One of the things that I would suggest with this rider, from my point of view, is tell her that her helmet needs to remain level at all times, because you'll see that she drops her head. See that? Yes. Her helmet should stay more level. She's also jumping a little bit in front of her horse, which is causing her to fall back. This is where she's not riding through her hips and seat. And look, her hands are pretty consistent, but then all of a sudden, see how her body folds over so much?
Exactly, yeah.
She's no longer over her lower legs. And a rider with the skill level of this rider and the horse that she's riding, it should be, once she gets the feeling, she'll get it pretty fast, because that's a nice rider. And of course, a nice horse.
Good, thank you. Those were some good suggestions, Randy.
So you're saying that she comes back too early. Let's see if I can stop the video when she does that. Okay.
Yeah, well, she drops forward too far forward first. Now you can see she tips right off the front of the saddle, right about there. And then her seat has slid back. So the only way she can rebalance herself is to try to bring her shoulders back over her seat, because by then, the seat's gone way back. And this is a natural reaction.
Yeah. So when they get ahead, they have to compensate when they land.
That's right. And you'll see as she comes up to the fence, she starts bringing her shoulders forward instead of sinking deeper into her lower legs. Again, a very common thing. She's climbing up the horse's neck instead of focusing on staying centered in the saddle over her lower legs. And it's just for a couple steps. But those couple steps when you're doing the equitation division are really big deal.
Mhm.
Yeah. So let's just watch it here.
Yep. Now she's getting ready for the fence. She's going to start sliding back. There she goes.
Mhm.
And like I said, it's just a stride or two. She's a very accomplished rider. But at that point, for whatever reason, she's climbing up the horse's neck instead of going deeper into her seat, or her shoulders stay, because her shoulders go way ahead of where the martingale or anything would be, right?
Right,
So
right.
when you think of it, just if we watch it, you can see she looks like she's anticipating the jump.
Mm-hmm. And it's a new horse, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, longer stride, big jump and everything, but a rider of this level can change that. See, there she goes, climbing up the horse's neck instead of sinking into her lower legs.
So what did we talk about with the other people was when this happens. Oh, you can't see what I'm doing. When this happens, can I draw on this one? Yeah.
I think we've been doing lots of gymnastics so that she has the time to actually feel what her body is doing.
Yeah.
You know, rather than when you're jumping a whole course, you're so concerned about making it over the course. But gymnastics or single fences, just the repetition of, as Randy says, as you come to the jump, sinking down a little bit, but staying light with your seat and not throwing your shoulders ahead of your body.
So I liked it when I think it was Meredith mentioned it, to think of the distance between your hands and your chest getting bigger. We always say try to be able to get a helmet in there, but if you think of pushing your upper body away from your hands, that will help keep your body open. But my thing is, if you take the horse away from underneath this rider, what's going to happen to this rider? They're going to fall on their head. So right at this point where the horse is trying to lift off the ground, you can see that she's too far forward. And she just has to open up her hip angle and keep her seat over the seat of the saddle. Sounds easy. All she has to do is
right.
seat over the middle of the saddle and push her shoulders away from her hands by opening up her hip angle. Easy peasy, right?
Well,
but like what you said, I think you're doing the right thing though. Like all the gymnastics, and just stay still, stay still, stay still.
It's just going to take some practice. But seeing the video was very helpful, because as Randy said, I didn't see, except when I watched this video, how much she was jumping ahead. I was more focused on how much on the landing, you know, instead of watching what was going on in front of the jump. So that was good to see this video and hear those comments.
So the landing in front of the landing after the jump is a direct symptom of what is happening in front of the jump. So she's getting ahead in the front, so she's coming back too early.
Yeah,
that's what I think happens.
Yeah,
it's like a whiplash effect. There's nothing else she can do because she's lost the connection of her seat over her lower legs.
Yeah. So let's see if she does it over the second jump. See if she's it's the same sort of thing. I mean, it's beautiful. She's a lovely rider, and it's for like one step. No, that was pretty good. That was okay. Yeah. And she stayed good on the landing too. But when she gets ahead, she comes back too soon.
So it's her tendency, but with a trainer like Patricia, it's not going to take long to fix this. I would suggest a neck strap or a martingale so she keeps her hands more consistent, because she's reaching a long ways up the neck.
Yeah, we need to, unfortunately, the martingale we got did not fit this horse, but I definitely want a martingale on him. Absolutely.
How about a breastplate?
Well, it has to be something where she has a place to see how far.
Right.
Yeah, that's what we're getting at, right? Is that not necessarily for the horse, but for the rider to keep her hands still.
When you're training at home, all you need is a piece of twine around the horse's neck, like a martingale, where she knows she can watch.
Stirrup leather or something.
If her shoulders go in front of that neck strap, she's jumping ahead of the motion and climbing.
He got real keen there at the end, didn't he?
Yes. Like I said, he's got a huge step, and it's hard to remember those things and keep your horse under control, because it's not like he's a strong horse, but he just needs to keep going slow.
Well, and they're still learning each other too.
Getting used to
Okay,
one.
so we are out of time now. Well, thank you so much, Patricia, for showing us that.
Thank you, everybody. Good to see you again, Randy.
Good to see you too again,
Laura.
Yeah.
Always good to see you too.
Yeah, so thank you, everybody, for watching. If you do have any questions, we'd love to have you send your questions in here. Put it in the comments, either wherever the comments are, if you're watching on YouTube or on Facebook. And are we doing something next week?
Do you have a guest next week?
Next week is Christmas.
Oh, that's right.
It's 26th, so we might have kind of a casual Christmassy thing.
Oh,
how's that sound?
that'd be fun. Yeah, everyone send in some Christmas questions and
Christmas
videos.
questions.
Yeah.
And also keep in mind that some people celebrate Hanukkah, and there's other holidays that are happening at this time. So we wish you all a happy holiday season.
Absolutely.
Look forward to seeing you again soon.
Yes.
Last words, Patricia?
No, just practice this stuff at home. Can't do it at the show if you don't practice it at home.
Exactly. Practice is perfect. Or as perfect as we can get.
Our best
what Ian Miller says is practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. Right?
Right.
Well, thank you so much, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Ride horses.
Pardon me?
Obviously said by somebody who doesn't ride horses.
Ian Miller said that. So, eat that one.
I disagree with it. But anyway.
Okay. Well, you can do that. You can disagree with Ian Miller. That's okay. We'll let you. So go use this stuff and go hug your horse. So we'll see you next week. Okay.
Bye.
Bye. I'm just going to put this up here while I end the broadcast.